we might do the 2022 Gabe Davis thing with Jamison Williams. Like,
I
think that might really happen, and I think people should steel themselves for it, right? Like, this could be one of those situations where like every fantasy expert has to choose a side, and maybe not. Maybe we learned from the Gabe Davis wars. I'm not sure, but it feels like it could develop into like one of those big Anchorman style fights where like we're all on the playing field with this one. Of course, he scored a pair of touchdowns in the narrow loss to the Niners. He was great. He's been a big play guy since he came into the league. There are a lot of just Williams zealots out there who I feel like have maybe been waiting for a performance like this in much the same way that people were waiting for the Gabe Davis supernova game, which he gave us in the biggest moment. Against, one of the best teams of the era, right? So like, I feel like we may have just had that with Jamison Williams. Now, it wasn't like he's not getting a ton of targets. He's not getting a ton of touches necessarily, but he is going into what should be, knock on wood, should be his first sort of normal NFL offseason where he's healthy and he's not suspended and there's no issues there. And he's got Ben Johnson back. And hey, this is, like, I don't know. If you are somebody who has been really, really open to the idea that Jamison Williams can be a superstar at some point off of, he had one enormous collegiate season. We know that he's got significant athletic gifts, very fast, all that, explosive player. If you've been waiting for it, you got a nice little taste against the Niners, and I think people are going to try to build that into something pretty big. Like, I think there's a chance that we see Jamison Williams going in like the 5th and 6th round in certain drafts next year.
Oh man, that's really scary. That thought that you just threw out there. So there were 10 receivers that scored more than 20 fantasy points so far in the postseason. Jamison Williams is one of them. He's the only one that did it on single-digit targets. 9 targets, 6 catches, 79 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, then he had the 42-yard run for a touchdown against the San Francisco 49ers. And yeah, man, I'm with you that I think, and it's crazy, we're now officially 2 years into Jamison Williams' career, a very weird career that it has been. And I still feel like he is one of the most confounding players in the NFL. But I don't really know where I'm going to fall down on the Jamison Williams wars if those are destined to happen in the NFL offseason, Andy. But here's what I do know so far. All caveats admitted that he's had injuries. He's had weird off the field stuff. There was the gambling suspension. He hasn't really had a normal NFL season or a normal NFL offseason yet to this point. And that does matter a lot. Like, we just don't give that enough credit, that having a normal offseason, normal prep, all of that stuff, and just walking into the season as everybody else gets to, that can really throw off a player and throw off the trajectory of their entire season. That stuff really does matter. At the same time, though, Andy, I mean, I don't have him like fully charted out from this season, but I did chart out a few games at times this season, and like the route running and the separation's a mess, man. Like we're 2 years into his career and he's super, super raw. I think he could end up being one of those guys where you look at the big plays and you look at the big like the yards per target or something like that, and you think, why doesn't he get more targets? And it's like, well, the evidence is all over the film why he doesn't get more targets. And the reason I think that matters, even though all the caveats I admitted, that I liked Jamison Williams as a prospect. They graded him out as a first rounder, but not a guy that was in the same draft class, in the same tier of guys like London and Olave and Wilson, whereas other people were like, oh, he's the best receiver in this class. I thought that even if he hit, I thought he had a chance to be one of those like low usage, high yield type of players. So even if he does get back on track in his NFL career, I'm still concerned that he might be you throw this guy throw the ball 5-6 times, and you hope that 1 or 2 of those per game is a really massive play.
Yeah, I want to be clear that I'm never going to be the person who's taking, and I don't know that this will happen, but I'm not going to be the person who's taking Jamison Williams in the 5th round, in the 6th round, anywhere in that vicinity, because I think he's ultimately going to end up, I always think that the most likely scenario for most players probably looks a lot like what we just saw. And he probably ends up as one of those guys who's sort of a best ball only type. And there are moments within the season where the true believers get to sort of pound the table and say that they were right all along, right? And then the next week is 2 touches, 21 yards. Like I think it's going to be like that. In kind of the same way that Gabe Davis gave us, like after the Gabe Davis wars, he gave us a season where everybody could claim partial victory, right? Like it wasn't great, but like he still had some really nice moments. He had a couple games that might have been week winners for you, but it was basically the same Gabe Davis experience. And it just so happened that he left us on the greatest game of his career. And we were like, oh, well, that's, he's clearly trending up based on, one data point and ignoring the way that he finished the regular season. I just think there's a good chance that some of that is going to go on with Williams. Maybe it doesn't. Again, maybe we've learned. I also think that unless something unforeseeable happens in Detroit, there's just simply no path for Jameson Williams to be like the number 2 in that offense. Like that's just not going to happen. Like they're running it back with everybody they just had. It's a great cast. I don't know how you find 10 opportunities a game for Jameson Williams in that offense, given everything else around him. So I ultimately, I don't think that happens. I think he's kind of a poor man's Will Fuller, maybe. I don't think it's going to be great, but I think there are going to be some people who are really paying an expectant price.